Okay.
I can,
Sorry.
as I mentioned to you, I could see the connection between, this pasuk was said on the 1st of Nisan, right? So there's a connection between Paraduma, which Chazal say was one of the 8 parshios. Chukas was one of the 8 parshios that was given, and the inauguration of the Mishkan. There's the definite connection there because it happened on the same day.
That was a very nice thing that you pointed out.
Yeah, but other than that, the Yom Kippur, I don't see the connection. I mean, other than this drush.
Yep. So let's actually look at Chumash Rashi, because Tosfos refers to Chumash Rashi. So the pasuk says, "Kasher asa b'yom hazeh," just like was done on that day, which is referring to the first day of the Shiva Shmei Malun. Tziva Hashem lasos l'chaper aleichem. So Rashi right away says, "Tziva Hashem lasos kol shiva sayomim." So, Kasher, when it says in the pasuk, "Tziva Hashem lasos l'chaper aleichem," it's not referring to other things. Pasuk Pshat. Pasuk Pshat is referring to all of the 7 days that Moshe did the training. All those 7 days have followed the same rules and the same process as the first day. That's the pasuk, the Pshat, and the pasuk. Rabbi Sena Darshu, now Rashi brings down the drasha for the second Pshat. Lasos zeh my Tzipora Rochel zeh my siyam Kippurim u'lelamed shekohen gadol ton prisha kodim yom Kippurim shevish yomim v'chein hakohen aser v'sapora. So it's very interesting because I would love to learn a Rashi sicha on this Rashi, because he usually explains what was the difficulty with the Pashup Pshat that Rashi saw the need to bring in the Drash, because the Pashup Pshat seems to fit in very well.
Right.
But we should clearly see that Pashup Pshat in the Pasuk is not the Drasha. The Drasha is just a Drasha that our Gemara made. Okay, I just want to announce also that today's shir today's broadcast is sponsored by Shmini Lerman family, to be a schos for Refuah Shalema for Yeshua, Nosson Akiva, and Tzipora Rochel. We should have Refuah Shalema. Yesterday morning was the last report that I got on Akiva, that he's stable. He's not getting worse. He wasn't getting better. But that was in the morning at 7 o'clock. Carmela responded. She only gets 2 reports a day from the hospital. She's also pretty much cut off with communication. But hopefully we will hear, if anybody heard from him.
Yeah, I heard from him. He responded to a message and he said he didn't specify. He sounded very weak and out of breath. But he said, keep davening, basically. He appreciates
he was speaking or he was texting?
He was speaking. He was kind of breathless, but he was speaking. He says he appreciates our tefillos, and
he should have a full shalom.
Right. He probably himself doesn't know how he's doing, if he's getting, I don't know. It's not clear from his message how he's doing. But it's clear from his voice. It's clear from his voice that he needs to do a lot better. I can tell you that. He left a voice message.
Right. So that's like he probably leaves for different people at different times, because if he answers all the messages that he got, he wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
We're all sending him well wishes, and Hashem should help. He should come home and feel better soon, for him, for his sake, and for his family's sake.
Yeah. And
for our sake. We need him here. There's a lot of pent up frustration in the Agura that Akiva always diffuses.
Right.
It's like a dry forest now. Without Akiva to add some moisture, anything could happen. So I told Akiva, there's a lot of people relying on you. Today's also the yahrzeit of Rab Shai ben Moshe, the Kerestir of Rab Shai Kerestir. It's his yahrzeit today. And everyone talks about it. But he was. My favorite line that he used to have was when he had issues with Goyim who were causing trouble for Eden, he would tell them, "Oder Beigen, oder Leigen." And and it tended to work. It tended to work no matter what choice the guy made. The Bagan, I don't like him, but he was a big tzaddik, and he helped a lot of people.
Means either bow or lay down.
In other words, either give in and don't bother us, or lay down permanently. Sure. She wants to share a story with Reb Shaila. Shai by Moshe Steiner.
Shaila one time was among a group of Hasidim. They were speaking about the Nisim that he performed. So he sits down and he says, nobody should listen to these types of Nisim. I'm going to tell you a moifus that I did. So everybody's listening. And he says, I came home one time and there was a Yid shaking in fear in my house. And he said, Shai, you have to help me, Rebbe, you have to help me because there's a guy in my house and he wants to kill me. He says, what, a guy in your house? He says, yeah, the guy is threatening to kill me. So the Rebbe says, okay, fine, let's go to the house. We go to the house and we see that there's like a 9-foot guy and he's holding a 6-foot axe and he says, I'm going to kill this Jew. So the Rebbe says, over what? What happened? He says, this Jew hired me to cut a wagon load of wood, and the wagon load is outside. I spent the whole day cutting the wagon load of wood, and I want my 12 drainers. So 12 drainers is, I don't know, $200. So the guy, the Rebbe looks at the Yid and he says, no, Yid, how come you're not paying him? So he says, I'm not paying him for a wagon load of wood because the wood is supposed to be stacked. I'm supposed to have twice as much wood as in there. The wood is just thrown in. That's a half a wagon. So he looks at the guy and he says, it's a good timer. The guy says, that's a full wagon, and if I don't walk out of here with 12 drainage, I'm going to kill this Jew. And the axe is my wood axe, and that's what I'm going to do. So the child says, you know what, Eden? I performed a more. So the boy walked out of there to freedom, and the Yid was safe. You know what I did? You can all look, and their mouths are agape because I feed them the 12 rings. That's the most.
I didn't hear the punchline.
I paid him his 12 Reinish.
No.
That was how I made the moifus. I paid him 12, and miraculously he walked away happy, and my chussid was safe. Okay, so let's get started. It's also actually the Yorchid of Rabbi Yosef Breuer, who was, I don't know if he was a founder, but we know the Washington Nights Kehillah as Breuer's. So he's a Shomer Shalav Aliyah. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says over here. So we're on to Avdallah Amud Aleph, and we had a couple of different pshatim how we know that the 7 days before Yom Kippur there's Prisha. So the first segment of the Gemara we had learned it from the pasuk of Kasher Asa B'Yom Hazeh, and there was a shaila if we're darshaning both from the pasuk Lasos is Par Aduma and the Chaper is Yom Kippur, or maybe it's only Yom Kippur and the Par Aduma is only a Maila Ba'alma, which we quoted from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said we know Yom Kippur from the pasuk from the drasha, and we know Par Aduma only because it's a Maila Ba'alma. It's not learned out of a drasha in the pasuk at all. Reish Lakish challenged Rabbi Yochanan, and he told Rabbi Yochanan, if you hold that the makar of the Prisha for the 7 days is Shemoni Shemei Meluim, well then it should be Ma'akim. And that means the second Kohen Gadol that you set aside as a backup should also need Prisha, and the Mishnah doesn't seem to mandate that. So Rabbi Yochanan told Reish Lakish, okay, you don't like my pshat, so do you have anything better to say? So Reish Lakish said, yes, I'm going to learn Prisha from the Har Sinai, where a week before Har Sinai, Moshe was Pirish, and why is there a 7th day? Because we're Choshish L'Tumas Beisan. So now that Reish Lakish said where he got his limud from, that he learns it from Sinai, Rabbi Yochanan challenged Reish Lakish, and he asked, we know that during the 7 days, both of the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur, as well as the Kohen before he prepared the ashes of the Par Aduma, before he prepares the Par Aduma, not the ashes, the whole process of the Par Aduma, there's a din to do hazah. Where does that come from? Mikol Chatois So Yusham, what Rashi told us yesterday, that either it means all the Chatois or it means the Chatos of Moshe. So it makes sense where we get it from, because we're learning it from Meluyim, and by Meluyim there was hazah. The Elvis Misinai, according to you, who the whole makar of this Prisha is Har Sinai, Hazah b'sinim mehavoi. There was no hazah. Omer lei. So Rish Lakish told the Rechner back. That's not a kasha. Ulatamech minicha. It doesn't help you either, because b'miluim dam hachamayim. By the miluyim, they didn't spritz the meipar aduma on Moshe. They rather the Kohanim, they spritzed dam. And here, what we're suggesting is that you spritz them with the meipar aduma the week before. So there's no shaykhs. So haloi kasha. That's not shver. The Tani Rabchia nichnasu mayim tachas dam. Instead of mayim, there's dam. But of course, it's good enough. So the question is, what does it mean nichnasu mayim tachas dam? So this is the Tosfos that I wanted to point out. The lav legamrei drasha gemurhi. It's not even like a real drasha. It's like a remes drasha. Ha de gami b'maluyim. That we learned it out of maluyim. El asmachta ba'alma. It's really an asmachta. So just a signal in the pasuk to such a concept, but this is not even the real makar. The ikar kra, the kasher asa b'yom hazeh, the real pshat in the pasuk, like we learned in Rashi, yesh lefarish, the b'yom rishon shal zayin yimei maluyim, omer lehem, kasher asa b'yom hazeh, tziv Hashem lasas kol zayin yimei maluyim. The same instructions that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave them for the first day is to be repeated all 7 days. The chein pirish Rashi pshutei pirish chumash. That's exactly what we learned from Rashi, Pashup Pshat, at the beginning today. The chivun da smachta ba'almahu. Since it's merely in the smachta, ein lachash yamrin nichsu mayim tachas dam. The whole thing is just a remes. The real makar is not from that pasuk, and since the real makar is not from that pasuk, we could say nichsu mayim tachas dam. Fact Gemara, ela l'didach hazah b'sinai mi'avoy. But according to Yurish Lakish, there wasn't even hazah of mayim, of dam. There was no hazah at all. So why is there hazah by the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur, or the Kohen before the Ma'aseh Paraduma? Where do you go? Where do you get that from? Amalei, that Rish Lakish answered, Ma'ila ba'alma. The same way you learned that the whole concept of Paraduma is a Ma'ila ba'alma, I could learn that the din that we spritz dam, that we spritz them with the Mei Paraduma, is just an extra Ma'ila of Kedusha. But in fact, there is no makar from the Torah to teach that to you. We're going to have a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan's position, that we learn it from the pasuk, and we're going to have a brisa that supports Rish Lakish's position, that we learn it from Har Sinai. Tanya Kavasa Rabbi Yochanan. It says in the pasuk by Yom Kippur, "Bezois Yavai Aaron ala Kodesh." With this, Aaron will come to the Kodesh. We keep on learning this pasuk again, bezois. So everybody knows the famous word, but it's kedai to mention is that when we say bezois, with zois, Aaron should come to the Kodesh. And the question is, what is the zois? So we say at the end of Nosson Akiva, we say useshuva, usefila, utzedaka, ma'avir nisroy agzera. And in most machzorim, under or over the word tshuva, it says tzoim. Under tefillah, it says koil, and under tzedakah it says mammon. So someone pointed out that koil is the gematria of 136, right? Kuf of lamed. Mammon is also 136. 80 and 50 is 130, and vav is 6. And tzoim is also 136. 136 times 3 is 408. Bezois, with zois, which is the gematria, 408, with tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, yavei Aaron ala kodesh. So bezois yavei Aaron ala kodesh, what is he going to come with? B'ma she'amar be'inyan, with what it discusses in the inyan somewhere else. Bezois, there's some process that you're going to follow to come la kodesh. So Zok the Gemara, mahi be'inyan, what is mahi? What is this inyan that we're talking about? The same process that was done by the Miluyim, that's the process that the Torah is telling us you have to follow by Yom Kippur. So now it makes a little bit more sense, because Tosfos said a minute ago that it's really an esmachta ba'alma. So where is the makar? So the makar is from the bezois yavei Aaron al kodesh, b'mash amar be'inyan. So ma amar be'inyan the Miluyim, Aaron pirish shiva v'shimei shem echad. Aaron separated himself for 7 days, and he did avoida one day, Moshe Moser Loi Kol Shiva K'tei Lachancha B'Avoida. And Moshe was given over to him all 7 days to teach him the avoida, and therefore Ba'afla Doyos, and so too in future generations, Kohen Gadol Poyer Shiva U'Mishama Shem Echad, and the same way that by the Maluyim Moshe trained Aaron, by this Kohen Gadol, every year before Yom Kippur, Shnei Talmidei Chachamim, Talmidav Shel Moshe, 2 Talmidei Chachamim from the Talmidim of Moshe. What do you mean Talmidim of Moshe? Lafuket Tzedukin, someone who's going to teach him to do it properly, not like the Tzedukim. Moshe like Kol Shiva, they give over to the Kohen Gadol to spend with him all 7 days. Kedei Lachancha B'Avoda. So let's just see Rashi. Tanya Kavasai, Rabbi Yochanan, Yalf Malum, Krish Lakish, the Yalf Sinai, Bezois, Kor Yiserahu. It's really an extra pasuk. Kid Lakaman, like the Gemara is going to point out later. Lamidush Bey, V'Dorsh Be'achi, Bezois HaTorah, Amur Be'inyan, B'Makamacher, with the same Torah, the same process that's mentioned somewhere else in the Torah. Yavei Aaron el Kodesh. That's the process that Aaron should follow before he comes to the Kodesh on Yom Kippur. And after Aaron was trained 7 days, then he did the avoida. Shenemar karav al mizbeach. Lafukat tzedokim. Shayu mishanin avodas k'toris yom kippurim. They would ruin the way they did the k'toris, because the right way to do the k'toris is to bring the k'toris in one container and the machta separately, and then after the Kohen Gadol entered the base Kodesh HaKodeshim, he put the k'toris onto the gecholim. However, what they would do is they thought that the Torah has to already be on the fire when the Kohen Gadol enters the base Kodesh HaKodeshim, because they don't dash in the psukim properly, and therefore we had to make sure to train the Kohen Gadol with Talmidim of Moshe and not Talmidim of the Tzedukim. Now the question is, by Aaron, by the Maluyim, Moshe was the single person that trained Aaron. Yet by the Kohen Gadol, he's given 2 Talmidei Chachamim. Why 2? Why isn't 1 enough? And the answer is because if he does it wrong, if the Kohen Gadol does avoid wrong, he'll say, "Well, I was taught to do it the wrong way," and it's his word against the word of the person who was sent to train him. If 2 people are sent to train him, then they have 2 edis that can testify that the Kohen was properly instructed, and he can never use any excuses that he was training on it. So from here we learn that Shiva Shavim Kodesh Yom Kippurim Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mibesai LeLishkas Parhedrin. We separate the Kohen Gadol into the Lishkas HaParhedrin, and Chashem Shemafrishin Kohen Gadol Kach Mafrishin Kohen HaServ Apora. So too, the Kohen who's going to burn the paraduma, he also is separated before the process. The Lishkosh Alpnei Abira, to the room that's opposite the Bira, to find the Mizracha. And V'echadzeh, both of these people, Mazin Alov Kol Shiva, Mikol Chatoyish Shahayu Sham. Now Rashi points out very important. Even though the Brisa is extending this halacha to the Kohen preparing the paraduma, nevertheless, Rashi points out Rabbi Yochanan is only learning from the pasuk the preparation before Yom Kippur. The paraduma, Rabbi Yochanan said earlier, is only a mile ba'alma. The Kohen before the paraduma is not from the pasuk a mile ba'alma. Okay. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Vim Toimar, Bimiluyim Dam, and Hachamayim, and if you're going to ask me the kasha, that what's the comparison from Miluyim to here? By Miluyim they spritz dam, yet by Yom Kippur they used mayim. Amit nichnasu mayim tachas dam. And this is all still quoting the Brisa that's supporting clearly Rabbi Yochanan and Shita. But the Brisa brings down another pasuk of kasher asa b'yom ezeh tziva Hashem lasos l'chaper elechem lasos elu ma'aseh para l'chaper elu ma'aseh yom kippur. So this is very nice to highlight what Tosfos said. Tosfos said that this pasuk is really only an asmachta ba'alma. The real limud is from the bezois, and it also makes sense why Rabbi Yochanan holds from the pasuk you really only know the preparation of Yom Kippur. The preparation for the paraduma is not mentioned in the pasuk of Bezois. And since that's his primary pasuk, it makes sense why Rabbi Yechon says we only have a pasuk for before Yom Kippur, and the separation and the preparation we do for the kohen doing the paraduma is only a ma'ila ba'alma within the smachta. Fact the Gemara, the high Bezois mibayla legufei. How could you learn this extra limud that Bezois is referring to some foreign process? You need Bezois to teach you taich in the pasuk. The Torah is being very clear. In order to be able to come to Kodesh, in order to do the avodah, Aaron has to bring these two karbanos. So maybe, did you ever think that maybe the Torah actually means what it says? So the Gemara, Amri ilakarban lechudei. If that's all the Torah wanted to teach us from the bezois, then lemikra bezeh oibeela, a par and an ayil are male. So it should use a lashon that has a male gender to it. The pronouns are important. Bazeh, oibeela, those are lashon zocher. My bezois, which Rashi tells us is lashon nekeva. Par va'ayil dechsidu basrei lav nekeva. So since it's used a lashon nekeva bezois, shmas minot referring to something else that has a female gender. Tarti. And Rashi says shmamina be'inyin meluyim uprisha is lashon nekeva. So the word zois
plural.
Bezois is not necessarily plural. It
But
could be
could it
plural.
be plural? So
I mean,
there,
with
there's more
this.
than one. With these, because there's more than one. Oh, it's not. Okay.
So are you suggesting that the zoisa would be appropriate to use for par ben bakr lachatas and ayal
Right.
oila?
Right.
No, then it should have said be'elu.
The Elu.
Right.
Okay. 'cause
These
Zev,
in male tense would be be'elu.
Okay.
So zois seems to indicate that it's talking about items with a female gender. And the best way to describe that is with prisha. 1 second, I'm getting mixed up over here. 1 second. Okay, gewaltig. Zok the hele Gemara weiter. My v'omer. Why did we need to bring a second pasuk from Kasher Asa B'Yom Hazeh? What was wrong with the bezois? V'chitema. If you might argue that bezois was the instructions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was given to Aaron the Kohen related to the very first Yom Kippur. So if you want to argue that Yom Kippurim Kama Hu D'Bay Prisha Kida Ashkam B'Miluim, maybe this is only for the first Yom Kippur, Aval B'Yom Kippurim D'Alma, but for future Yom Kippurims, Loi Inami maybe Kohen Gadol Kama Hu D'Bay Prisha. Maybe this was instructions only for Aaron the Kohen to follow. Aval Kohen Gadol B'Alma Loi, but maybe other Kohen goes after Aaron, maybe don't have to go through this process. Talmud Leimer Kasher also to tell you that the remez only that the same process that we use the first year should always be used. Zok the Heilige Rashi, Kohen Gadol Kama Aaron Levadoi Kol Yomav. You might have thought that it's only Aaron to do. Aval Bidayir Saboyim Loy Sinak. Maybe this process wouldn't be followed. Shalai Noimer Elul Aaron. For Mashmalon, the remez, the smachta of the second pasuk, to teach us that this is the process forever. So that was the brisa that seems to be very clear, explaining that the makor of the halacha of the Zayin Yomim is the bezois together with the pasuk of the Kasher Asa B'Yom Hazeh. Now the Gemara says Tani Kavas the Rish Lakish that the source of the prisha is from Sinai. It says as follows, and I think it's kedai to look at the psukim inside to get an understanding of what this is going to be discussing here. At the end of Parashas Mishpatim, the psukim describe a story, and we're not sure what the story is. There's two pshatim that Rashi brings down that our Gemara discusses. It says, "Vayal Moshe al Har, vaychas ha'anan har." Moshe went up to the mountain, and the Anan covered the Har. And we don't know when this was. Was this before the Aseret Shedivros, before Matan Torah, or was this after Matan Torah? What we do know for a fact is before Matan Torah, Klal Yisrael was told to prepare to to separate from their wives for 3 days, to put a rope around the mountain to make sure no one can access it, and then on Shavuos, whether it was the 6th day of Sivan or the 7th day of Sivan, was Kabbalas Torah. Regardless, that day was Shabbos. It's either Shabbos was on the 6th day of Sivan that year or on the 7th day of Sivan that year. And then after HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Kabbalah Torah and told us the Aseret Dibros. After that, Moshe Rabbeinu went up for 40 days and 40 nights where he learned the Torah, and then he came down with the Luchos. That's the chronology according to everybody. The question here is what this pasuk is referring to. It says, "Vayal Moshe Elahar v'yichas Hanan Asar." Was this during the first week of Sivan before Kabbalah Torah, or did this occur after Kabbalah Torah when he was preparing to go up for 40 days? And it says, "Vayishkain Kvod Hashem al Har Sinai." The Shechina of the Rebbeinu Shalom rested on Har Sinai. Vayichaseyu ha'anan sheishes yamim, and it was covered with the cloud for 6 days. And after those 6 days, Vayikra el Moshe v'yoyim hashvi mitoich ha'anan, Hashem called out to Moshe Rabbeinu mitoich ha'anan. So the question is this happening? Is this Vayikra el Moshe? Is this occurring right before Kabbalah Torah, or is this happening much later after the Kabbalah Torah? So once again, what we know for sure is that from Rosh Chodesh Sivan till either the 6th day of Sivan or the 7th day of Sivan, there was cloud on the mountain. Moshe Rabbeinu was there on the mountain, and then they were makabel the Torah. Then Moshe went up again for 40 days. And
You have to be clear, Yosy. You have to be clear when you say Kabbalah Torah. You mean the Aseret Dibros? What do you mean
yes,
exactly?
I mean the Aseret Dibros, the Maimon Har Sinai. Yeah.
Okay,
So the Maimon Har Sinai was on
there's a
Shabbos,
difference.
the 6th or 7th day. That's correct.
The Bnei Israel actually weren't makabel the Torah until he came down the last time.
That's right.
Right? Which was on Yom Kippur. Right?
Right. When did they say Nasav and Nishma?
Okay. I think that was before Sivan, before the 6th of Sivan.
Before Kabbalah Torah.
Careful how
Okay.
you say that. You have to say before the Aseret Dibros. It's confusing
okay.
when
That's
you
right.
say
I keep on
Kabbalah
saying
Torah.
it here. Right. Okay. So let's just review. So until the 6th or 7th day of Sivan, there was an Anon on the mountain, and Moshe was on the mountain. However, and then there was the Aseret Dibros. On the 6th or 7th day of Sivan was the Aseret Dibros, which was a Shabbos. And then after the Aseret Dibros, Moshe went up again for 40 days, and then he came down at the end of those 40 days on Shavasar B'Tammuz with the Luchos and Rishayos. That was the order. The question that we're discussing is the Vayal Moshe Elahar V'chas Hanazar. Which period is it referring to? Is it referring to the period before the Aseret Dibros, or is it referring to the period that started the 40 days after the Aseret Dibros, the 40 days where Moshe went up? That's going to be the discussion. That's going to have enough meaning as to whether or not we could learn Prisha from the Sugya of Har Sinai. So let's see what the Rashi says. Tanya goes to the Rishlakish. Moshe Ola Ba'anan. Moshe went up into the Anan. V'niskasa Ba'anan, and he was covered with the Anan. V'niskadesh Ba'anan, and he became holy in the Anan. Kidei lakabel Torah liyisrael b'kedusha, in order to be able to be makabel Torah for Klal Yisrael with kedusha. Shenemar, a Yishkain covered Hashem al Har Sinai. This is the pasuk that we just read. Zehaya Maisa Achar Aseret Dibros. This story happened after the Aseret Dibros. Shehayu Tchila l'Arba'im Yom, which was the beginning of the 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the Luchos. Divrei Rabbi Yosy HaGlili. So let's just quickly see the Rashi here. Kloimer, Iyata Yachaloimar Vaychaseyu Lahar V'loy LeMoshe. Don't say, shot in this pasuk, is that the Onan was on the Har, but was not covering Moshe. Moshe wasn't there. And the Elu Shisha Yomim Hein Shahayu Meresh Chodesh. So don't say that the 6 days that we're talking about are the 6 days where Moshe really was not completely enveloped in the Onan. And these are the 6 days between Rosh Chodesh Shabo and Sinai, from when they came to Sinai, Ad Yoy Matan Torah. Don't say that. Because if you did learn shot like that, then the Eikan Prisha Klal L'Moshe, then this event, these 6 days, do not describe any type of Prisha. How do I know that? During the 6 days that preceded Kabbalah, preceded the Aseret Dibros, to be precise, Moshe Rabbeinu came down every day to instruct Klal Yisrael on their preparation for the Aseret Shadibros. La'asira na prishasan min isha u'mitzvah. So you can't say that. Zois loy toimar. Don't say that these are the 6 days that this pasuk is referring to. L'fi shezeh ma'aseh haya achar Aseret Shadibros. The pasuk of Vayishkein K'vod Hashem is after the Aseret Shadibros. B'tchilas arba'im yom, at the beginning of the 40-day period, shenichnas lamachan shechina, that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim, liyai sham im Hashem l'kabel haluchos. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the luchos.
Right.
When the Kamon Mefarish, soon the Gemara is going to explain mehecham shitalei the achar haser shadibros hayishisham alalu. It's saying here as a given that this pasuk is not referring to the 6 days preceding the Ser Shadibros, rather it's referring to the 6 days after the Ser Shadibros.
Right.
And where that comes from, we're going to soon see.
So we have to, if you ask the question, where was Moshe Rabbeinu when the Aser Sadibros were given? You have to say he was not on top of the mountain because
He was clearly with Klal Yisrael.
That's right.
That's
Because-
right. The Gemara is going to stress that.
Because the Klal Yisrael asked him to tell the Rebbe Shalom not to give the last 8 Aser Sadibros to them.
It's too
Right?
overwhelming.
According to Chazal, right? They didn't hear it. Moshe Rabbeinu heard it, but the rest.
That's also a shy who heard what? What the Gemara is going to discuss as well. Sorry?
The first 2 Aseret Shadibros
They heard.
they heard.
They knocked them out.
That's one of the reasons why Moshe Rabbeinu was down there,
That's
so
right.
that nobody could claim he was the one who was getting it.
Okay. So Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Kiva argues on Rabbi Yosy, and he holds Vayishkein K'vod Hashem mirish chodesh. This pasuk is referring to the week preceding the Aseret Shadibros. So before we turn over to Tzipora and Rashi, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Koydem Aseret Shadibros. This was before the Aseret Shadibros. V'shisha yom halalu hem shisha yomim shemirish chodesh ad yoy matan Torah. These are the 6 days that were from Rosh Chodesh till Matan Torah. U'b'shvi kablam. So there were 6 days of Prisha, or not Prisha, this on the mountain, and then on the 7th day was Kabbalah Torah, which means the Aseret Shadibros. U'Moshe v'chol Yisrael oimdim l'kabel Aseret Shadibros. That was the day where Moshe and Klal Yisrael together. So Moshe was with Klal Yisrael; they accepted the Aseret Shadibros. And they're reading Anoichi lo yelecha mipi agvura shemanum v'achagach Allah, and after the period of the Maimer Sinai, then Moshe Rabbeinu went up l'kabel saluchos lo hayisham Prisha Klal, and there was no Prisha at all. So Rashi here is cluing us in how you see that. So according to Rabbi Kiva, there was no Prisha because the week before the Maimer Sinai, the week before the Aseret Shadibros, that Moshe going up and down the mountain was no Prisha at all because he kept them coming down. But according to Rabbi Yosy Glili, that the 6 days that we're talking about are the 6 days preparing to go up for 40 days, then in fact there was a Prisha. So therefore, we now know why Reish Lakish is dependent on Rabbi Yosy Glili, and why it's a Tanya Kavasa to Reish Lakish. Because according to Rabbi Yosy Glili, those days were real Prisha. So by Har Sinai, in fact, we can demonstrate a real Prisha. But according to Rabbi Kiva, we cannot demonstrate any type of Prisha that occurred by Har Sinai. So Zaktim Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Yishkin K'vod Hashem.
One question. When was Klal Yisrael forbidden from approaching the mountain? Was that only before the
That
6
was
of Sivan?
only during the Aseret Shadibros.
Ah, okay.
For those, I don't know how long it took. I'm not sure how long the whole Maimon took, but during that Maimon they weren't allowed. Then the Yechaseya ha'anon lahar, the mount, the anon, the cloud covered the heart.
I think it was until Moshe Rabbeinu came back down for at least 40 days. They weren't allowed to approach be on Har Sinai, except for those who were
from before the Aseret Shadibros until after Moshe came down to Luchos.
Well,
yes.
if before, then I don't understand, because there would have been a Prisha, because Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain and they were not
He was coming
allowed,
down every day. He went up and down every day.
that he left the mountain?
Yeah, he was going up and down every day, telling Klal Yisrael what they
It doesn't
needed
say
to
that
do to prepare.
he went into the Machane. Maybe he just went to the base of the mountain. They weren't allowed to approach the base of the mountain.
Rashi tells us that it wasn't.
Rashi tells us that. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's see what happened over here. So Vayikra al Moshe. So Moshe v'chol Yisrael oimdu. Moshe and all of, if this Vayikra al Moshe is referring to the Aseret Shadibros, So then why is it Vayikra Moshe? It was Vayikra to all of Klal Yisrael, because the Aseret HaDibros were addressed to all of Klal Yisrael. So why did it say Al Moshe? Moshe v'Chol Yisrael even. So why did it say Vayikra Moshe? The Torah is just trying to give cover to Moshe that mentioned him by name. Rav Nosson Omer, Loi ba'akosov ela lemarik achila ushtia shebemeah. Rav Nosson holds like Rabbi Yosy Aglili, Rashi told us, that this Prisha that we're talking about is the Prisha after the Aseret HaDibros, at the beginning of the 40 days. But you still don't have a raya that there's a din Prisha of Kedusha from where you can extract that before Yom Kippur you also have Prisha. Because the Prisha that Moshe Rabbeinu went through when he was preparing to go up to Har Sinai was only Lamar Achilu Shtiya Shebemeah, to clear out any food that was in his system. Lasuma Kamalachi Yesharis. He's going up to Shemayim. He has to be like a Malachi Yesharis. So there's no independent Prisha. This is all just to clear out his intestines. That's what he was doing in the mountain. That's why he had to be covered over with the cloud. So the question is, if Moshe Rabbeinu only ate man, because that's what the diet was in the midbar, what did it clean out? We learned that the man didn't produce any type of tzolos. So there's different approaches to this. There's one approach is that they had the man, but they did have access to food. They were food merchants. Sometimes they were going down the midbar. There was a food cart set up. There were sometimes people in the midbar who sold them food. So maybe it was that food that had to be dealt with, or compared to Malach, even the mon inside the system has to be cleared out. Or there are those who learn pshat is Lamark Achilu Shtiya Shebemeyav doesn't really mean literally clearing out a system, but to remove him from any level of gashmius that he has. But whatever the case is, it wasn't the prisha that we could extract and say would be required by Kohen before Yom Kippur, because we're not becoming malachim. No Kohen Gadol is becoming like a malach. This was a completely separate issue. I think all of 6 be'ema b'yira b'reses v'zeya. Again, that 6 days wasn't the prisha that we could also extract and say it applies to Yom Kippur, because it was a separate thing. It was just to induce fear and respect in Moshe Rabbeinu. And Rashi says, if someone's alone, Yovin v'yosim levavoi likanes l'machne shechina be'ema. When you're not distracted and you're by yourself, you can focus and you can absorb and appreciate the tremendous kedusha that you're about to encounter. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Ivdu is Hashem b'yira. You have to serve Hashem b'yira v'gilu, and even when you're rejoicing b'r'ada, it should be with fear. My v'gilu b'r'ada. What does the pasuk tell us? So Gila, Rashi says, is Matan Torah Shaluchos. So when you're dealing with Matan Torah, which is a great celebration, a great simcha, there also has to be fear there. The Makamiflagi, Rabbi Yosy Aglili, Rabbi Akiva, we have a machloikis of these 6 days discussed in these pesukim, are the 6 days preceding the Aseret HaDibros or after the Aseret HaDibros. What's the machloikis totally in? It's totally in the machloikis of a different set of tanoim of when Kabbalah Satorah was. What was the date of the Aseret HaDibros? Titania, b'shisha b'chodesh nitna Torah Yisrael. That Shabbos that Klal Yisrael heard the Aseret HaDibros was the 6th day of Sivan, which means that Rosh Chodesh was Sunday. Rabbi Yosy b'shiva boy, which means Rosh Chodesh was Shabbos. So let's do the Bach quickly. Man. Oh no, so long. So man, the Omar B'shisha would mean that B'shisha Nitna, on the 6th day of Sivan, which was a Shabbos, that the Aseret HaDibros were told to Klal Yisrael, B'shiva Allah, and then on Sunday, the day after that day, Moshe Rabbeinu went up. And man the Omar B'shiva, and the man the Omar who holds that the Kabbalah Satorah was on the 7th day of Sivan, that was Shabbos. Then you have to say that Moshe Rabbeinu went up on the 7th day. Because regardless, you have to say that on the 7th day of Sivan, Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain. That you have to say. So even if you want to argue that Kabbalah or the Aseret HaDibros was on Shisha, then you'll say that Moshe Rabbeinu went up the next day. However, if the Aseret HaDibros was on Shiva, you have to say he went up that day. Because that's a hard date on the 7th day of Sivan, we know Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain, and we'll see soon how we know that. Hashem called out to Moshe b'yom hashvi, so we know for sure it was the Yom Hashvi. That's Rabbi Akiva Shita. So Rabbi Yosy Glili, Sover la Ketana Kama. Rabbi Yosy Glili will have to hold like a Ketana Kama. So Amar b'shisha b'chodesh nitna Torah. He'll learn like the Tanakama that the Aseret Shadibros was on the 6th day of Sivan. Therefore, Therefore, this isolation of 7 days had to have been after Aseret Shadibros, because if it was before the Aseret Shadibros, then Moshe wasn't around during the Aseret Shadibros. If the Aseret Shadibros was given on the 6th day, Moshe couldn't have been isolated for 7 days before then. So Zayamaisa Achar Aseret Shadibros. So now, basically, so I will look down the comment. So when it says Vayishkan Poed Hashem al Har Sinai Vayichaseo Adon Sheishes Yamim LaMoshe Vayikra El Moshe Vayoyim Hashvi LeKabule Shar Torah. So you have to learn from the pasuk that this crying out to Moshe, this calling out to Moshe, was not before the Aseret Shadibros. It was after the 6 days that he was isolated. After the Aseret Shadibros, Hashem called Moshe to come up to get the rest of the Torah. So Hashem is referring to Rosh Chodesh. If you're going to learn Pshat in the pasuk of Yishkin for Hashem is referring to Rosh Chodesh, Vayichasei Lahar, Vayikra Moshe, V'yom Hashvi, LeKabula Aseret Shadibros. If you're going to say the pasuk when it says over there that on the 7th day Moshe was called up to get Aseret Shadibros, Hakabili Lahu Mishisha. If you learn that you got the Aseret Shadibros on the 6th day of Sivan, why would Hashem be calling Moshe on the 7th day of Sivan to get Aseret Shadibros if it occurred the day before? Well, Hastalik on the Mishisha. The 6th day already the other went away, because we know Kabbalah. I have to be clear. We know that the Aseret Shadibros was on the 6th day of Sivan. So therefore, since Rabbi Yosy learned that the Aseret Shadibros was on the 6th day of Sivan, then you cannot learn Pshat in the pasuk that Hashem called Moshe on the 7th day to come to the Aseret Shadibros, because the Aseret Shadibros happened on the 6th day. So this period of 6 and 7 must be referring to a period that occurred after Aseret Shadibros, and it's a completely different set of 6 days before Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain for 40 days. Rabbi Akiva said, "Like Rabbi Yosy, and Rabbi Akiva would hold like Rabbi Yosy, that in fact the Aseret Shadibros occurred on the 7th day of Sivan, and therefore it makes perfect sense that for 6 days he isolated. On the 7th day, Hashem called out to Moshe and all of Klal Yisrael, like the Gemara says at the top of the Amid, and it only says Vayikra Moshe to give cover to Moshe, but really that was Hashem calling Klal Yisrael to say the Aseret Shadibros. Zok the Gemara, Bishlam Rabbi Akiva, Hani the Mishkachas of the Shavasha B'Tamas Tzipora Rochel. According to Rabbi Akiva, it makes sense to Cheshbon that on Shavasha B'Tamas the luchos were broken. That was the day Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the luchos. Let's make the calculation. If Aseret Shadibros was on the 6th day of Sivan, and then Moshe went up the next day, so then you have Esrin the Arba de Sivan. If there's 30 days in Sivan, and 6 days were gone, so he went up on the 7th day. So there's 26 days in Sivan. The Shitzar the Tammuz, and 16 days in Tammuz. Maldi Lahu Arba Yom, he has the 40 days, because when he went up on day 7, he didn't go up at Shkia by day 6. He went up sometime during the day, and he was there for 40 days. Me'es Leis. So therefore, when he came down on Shavasha B'Tammuz. Daven Bahar. So there would be 40 days on the mountain, 40 complete days. When the Shiv Sar Tammuz Nochas, and then he came down on the 17th day of Tammuz. He came with Tavrin Luchas, and on that day he broke the Luchas. So the Cheshbon is perfect. And Rabbi Yosy the Amar Shisha the Prisha Varboin the Har. According to Rabbi Yosy learns there were 6 days of Prisha after the Aseret Shadibros, and then the 40 days of the Har. Well, then that pushes the whole thing off by 6 days. That means he didn't come down on the 17th, he came down on the 23rd. The 40 days that we say Moshe Rabbeinu was up in Shemayim for 40 days and 40 nights, it wasn't really 40 days and 40 nights. It was really 34 days, because 6 of those days there was Prisha on the mountain, and it was only the rest of the time. So basically the 40 days includes those 6. Amar Mar, Vayikra Moshe. Give me 1 second. My computer is losing its battery. I forgot to plug it in, so I'll just plug it in. sorry about that. Omar Mar. So the Gemara says to analyze the brisa. See what it's up to. Vayikra Moshe b'chol Yisrael oimdin, and Moshe and all of Clarisol was standing there. Misayela, the Rabbi Lazar to right, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar, Vayikra Moshe b'chol Yisrael oimdin, le'ba kasav ela lachalak lekavod leMoshe. It was just giving respect to Moshe, even though all of Clarisol was there. The Rebbe Shem reached out to Moshe. Meisvei, koiloi lo. The pasuk says. The pasuk says that V'boy Moshe al oil moed ledaber itoi v'yishma es hakoil medaber elov. It doesn't say es hakoil medaber loy. It says es hakoil medaber elov. So the Gemara wants to know why is it that it doesn't just say koil loy. Why does it say koil elov? So the Gemara to teach us that Moshe shama v'chol Yisrael loy shama. When Hashem called out to Moshe, only Moshe heard, and the rest of Klal Yisrael didn't hear. What type of covenant is it for Moshe Rabbeinu if they call out to Moshe and only Moshe hears it? The whole covenant is that everybody hears that Hashem is addressing Moshe. So you're saying that Vayikra Moshe v'chol Yisrael oimdin, and it's lach like covenant to Moshe, but you see that in the oil moed when Hashem called Moshe, nobody heard about it. That's more like kasha habasina oil moed. In Sinai, when the voice called out to Moshe, everybody heard. In the oil moed, only Moshe heard. It depends on the word that the Torah uses. When the Torah uses the word kriya, that's that type of kriya everybody will hear. But when the pasuk uses the word vayidaber medaber elov, that is only to Moshe, and that nobody else will hear.
Every time it says in the pasuk Vayikra Moshe, even at the small aleph at the very beginning, everybody heard Hashem calling.
That's what the Gemara is saying here. That's what Rabbi Zika Rami, correct. Rabbi Zika asked the Stirim Psukim Kamed Rabbi Lozer. V'amilo Rabbi Zika, v'amilo Amar Rabbi Zika Rabbi Lozer Rami. Ksivit says v'layachal Moshe lo v'yal moed ki shachen olav adam. Moshe couldn't come into the oil moed because the Anam was there. V'chsiv v'yavi Moshe b'sayich Anam. It says that Moshe was able to go into the Anam. It says this by Kabbalah Torah. So tomorrow Malamit Shetaf Say Hakadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe v'yub Anam. Normally Moshe couldn't go into the Anam, but by Kabbalah Torah Hashem chapped Moshe and pulled him in. Very small Tana. Nemer kan b'soich, but nemer lahalon b'soich. Where does it say b'soich later on? It says vayavoy b'nei Yisrael b'soich hayom vayabasha. So ma lahalon shvil, just like by Kriyas Yamsuf, there was a special path that was made in the water that we could enter. So too, when Moshe ran up the mountain, even though it was full of anon, Moshe was able to get up the mountain because Hashem made from a path. Vayikra Moshe v'yidaber. It says Vayikra first and then Vayidaber. Why does it introduce it with Kriya? Lim the Torah derech. The Torah teaches you derech. Never just tell something to your friend. First call out to him, introduce yourself, and then get to the details. Unless you call him Lamar. Unless you call him, period. It says Lamar in the pasuk. What's the Lamar? Amar Moshe by Bered Messiah Moshe Rabba. How do you know that if you tell your friend something, he's not allowed to repeat it unless you specifically give him instructions and tell him he could repeat it? Yeah, you have to keep secrets. So you see from here, from Lamar, that Moshe would only say it over to Klal Yisrael if he was instructed to. Otherwise, he would give it to himself. However, okay, let's stop here because this is already going back to Rabbi Yechon Rishlakish. So the end of the Gemara here is that you're not supposed to something over to somebody else unless the person who told it to you gave you permission, and that's a whole shayla in the Chofetz Chaim, because things that are clearly public things you're allowed to say over. It's only things that from the content it's understood that maybe it's sensitive and it shouldn't be repeated. Okay, let's stop here. Shkoyach.
What's going on with Yosode this morning?